Guys,
Hey.
Well, hello.
what's happening?
All the things.
Yeah. Everything is happening. That's what.
Yeah.
State fairs, asteroid strikes,
as we
garbage
speak,
strikes.
As we speak,
Yeah.
there's no answer as to who won the Super Bowl.
No.
And yet, by the time our listeners hear this, they will know.
Well, that's the same for the
Should
Iowa
they care to?
caucuses.
Oh, there's that too.
This is an insane confluence of political and Americana. The Iowa caucuses, the Super Bowl, and the State of the Union will have all happened between the sound of our voices going out into the ether and them hitting the eardrums of our non-patron listeners.
And they'll know if Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow or not. It's a crazy time.
And Trump might be acquitted at the same time. Holy God, there's a lot going on.
I was going to say the big weather rat came out of his log. So that's all happened. Guys, come on.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah,
An
indeed.
eventful epoch in human history this is. And if it were it not eventful enough, today we have a show of shows.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna take us to the graveyard of the gods and pull out a fun tradition that goes along with it.
And then
Yeah.
I'm going to play our favorite game, Square That Circle, about Christian apologetics. Hooray!
And I am going to take a fun and wonderful trip through the body counts of the 20th century. So join us, won't you?
It's only fun.
Yeah.
It's only fun. And Uncle Dan, I think we're maybe starting a new thing this week.
Yeah, so y'all, if you become a patron of this show, which many
you
people
already
have, or you already are, we've got the big announcement is that we are starting to do patron-only content. It's like its own little show just for the patrons. The rest of you can go screw.
Hey, now, the rest
what?
of you can become patrons.
Yeah, exactly. You can be. It's easy enough to get your hands on. All you have to do is become a patron. We'll tell you all about that at the end of the show, or in the middle of the show, rather. And but it's just go to howtoheretic.com. It's super easy.
It's so easy.
Yeah, so do that, and then when we're not sure how exactly we're doing it, it might drop this week or next week, but it's happening. It's happening. So
and it will be for the most part weekly.
Yep.
yeah, for the most part weekly, and part of it will be responding to some lovely correspondence we get from you guys. So if you are a patron and you want us to talk about a subject, and we'll try to get to it in that segment, in the patron only stuff, just make sure you somehow tell us in your email that you are a patron.
Yeah, and we will do exactly zero research for it.
That's right. Which is how we do the whole show.
Which is
Clearly.
which is kind of our thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, let us do the voodoo we do.
Uncle Mark. Mm-hmm. Namaste.
Yes, namaste. Oh, yeah. This is our segment where we talk about Gwyneth Paltrow's exciting new Netflix show.
Which I did watch an episode.
Oh,
of.
you got through
Did
an
you?
episode? I
Yeah.
tried and couldn't.
Oh, they're dumb.
Yeah, I did hear that the Gamboys are reviewing it next week.
Oh, my God.
So
I
that
hope
should
they
be
didn't-
fun.
The first episode was just they just go and do mushrooms,
Yeah.
and they do
Oh.
it. They do it in this way that's like they might as well. They're making it seem like it's this big like ayahuasca ceremony, and
Yeah.
it's like, dude, it's just mushrooms, man.
Plus, people I know have taken drugs, and they've told me about it.
You've definitely never ever in your life.
And
None of your hosts have ever done anything.
The last thing I want, say somebody would want when they're high on mushrooms is like extreme proximity to other strange people. But that's just me. So, Uncle Dan, I think you have something that originates from the true Eastern philosophy. To
Oh my
talk about
goodness,
today.
yes. Because
A lady?
because it comes from there, I feel like Gwyneth will now listen to this segment.
Yes.
Okay, so history is tricky. It's replete with very confusing moments where good guys do horrible things and horrible people do good things, and good intentions lead to disaster, and horrible cruelty leads to a wonderful discovery.
This is going to be a theme of the show, by the way. Just strap in.
If it hasn't been the theme of the show since its inception.
Yes.
The fact is that nothing is simple when it comes to humans, and yet we crave simplicity, and that's why Americans were all taught since grade school that Christopher Columbus was a hero, and we're all shocked when we're told he was actually an idiotic monster on How to Heretic Episode 55 Coming to America. So, try not to be too confused when, a little later in this segment, I make heroes out of invading Muslim hordes and colonialist Christian missionaries. But first, a story of Hindu gods.
Way.
Isn't that fun?
Cody dropped the sitar in right there.
Yeah, do a sitar riff.
Yeah.
As
Ravi
always,
Shankar.
I will remind our listeners that Hindu stories are a confusing mess because every time everybody is reincarnated or an avatar of somebody else, and you spend half of your time reading the story of other incarnations of a god so that you'll understand why it makes so much sense that this god doesn't like mushrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
Also-
a billion believers and opinions vary.
Yes, indeed. And the stories vary. Every Hindu story has 250 different versions that
Right.
frequently contradict each other. So don't at me if the version I'm telling is not the one that you know.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
Get your
That's
shit
why-
together, Hindus.
That's why Christianity is the true religion,
That's
because
right.
that never happens.
That was the great innovation of monotheism. Is that
Yes.
like you can kind of keep the story down to a one narrative, a single narrative or whatever.
Narrative consistency.
Right, exactly. So yes, this is one of the stories, or I'm mixing them all up. Shut up, I just read it somewhere, okay? Anyway, I'm going to try to simplify the story and not get too deep into the karmic weeds. Suffice it to say, time is a flat circle, and all we are is dust in the wind. So, once upon a time, there was an Indian king named Daksha, who may have been a god, or at least the son of a god. He was the son of Lord Brahma. And he had some daughters. Now, his wife, Prasuti, being the good lady that she was, bore him 24 girls. Now, 24 daughters may sound like, enough to you and me, but Daksha was not satisfied, and he and his other wife, Panchajani, nailed it, really put the effort in and had 62 more.
Holy shit. All daughters?
Daughters.
Or,
Daughters. Shut up. They're all girls.
Wow.
However, Daksha found that every now and then he was still able to use a bathroom in the morning, which was totally unacceptable, so he whipped up another 60 daughters for good measure.
Jesus.
He was a busy boy.
Yeah.
For those keeping track at home, that was 146 little apples of Daksha's eye. And, well, it's that last one that we're going to discuss today. When Daksha had only 145 daughters, he and his wife Prasuti were really jonesing for that one more.
Yeah, they were
Brahma-
feeling like empty nesters at that point.
Yeah, and counting. 145 and counting is the
Yeah.
name of their reality show.
Yeah.
Brahma, his dad, told them to go meditate on the goddess Adi Parashakti. So they went into the forest, and after a long time of meditating, pretty sure that's a euphemism for something in this case, Adi Parashakti appeared to them, and they told her that they wanted another daughter. Or I don't know if they said another. They might have been tricking her and saying, and not letting her know that they already had a few. Anyway, she dug their vibe. She was into it, and she agreed to be born again as their daughter.
Wow.
So, Prasuti got prego, and shaboom, reborn goddess daughter number 146. And they named her Sati. Sati was I guess a good kid, I don't know. But when she got older, she was enthralled by the stories of Lord Shiva, who was a pretty big-time god, which she had been told since childhood. She was so captivated that she eventually decided that she was going to marry that fine hunk of god meat, and the only problem with that was that Shiva had a massive emo streak to him. He was an ascetic who would hang out alone in caves and listen to The Cure and Depeche Mode all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
He was going through a phase. He was
You
going
know
through a
that,
phase.
Mark. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So,
so emo, yeah.
so Sati knew she was going to have to do something special to get his attention. And she was Indian, so just dyeing her hair black wasn't going to be remotely goth enough.
Right.
So she left the comforts of her dad's luxury palace and went to live in the woods. And she went full Maggie Gyllenhaal in Secretary. Basically punished herself until he would notice her. which is the beginning of any healthy love story and doesn't foreshadow any troubles ahead, right?
Yeah.
Basically, so she finally gave up, and so she took on an ascetic life herself, and got increasingly ascetic. She gave up more and more of the comforts of life, and when she finally gave up that one last habit of eating that whole leaf every day and stopped food altogether, Lord Shiva finally said, "You know what? I think this girl's really got something." Oh. And they were married.
Oh, huzzah.
Yay.
And mazel tov, you
the
crazy
moral of
kids.
that story is eating disorders work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a tasteful wedding in a sexy stone-clad dungeon with candles everywhere and skulls and a big snake. She wore a black dress with a lace-up corset bodice and a black veil. He wore a black suit with a red tie. You know, nerdy but sweet.
They were metal before metal was cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sati's dad, Daksha, was not happy with any of this. He didn't like Shiva at all with his gauged ears and tattoos and whatnot. So, when he decided to throw a bonfire party and invite all the gods, he pointedly didn't invite Shiva and Sati. Well, Shiva was actually pretty cool with it and told Sati that they'd just stay at home and listen to Nine Inch Nails. But Sati really wanted to see her family, so she decided to crash the party, which is stupid. You never crash a party you weren't invited to if you're hoping for a happy result. That's just life, Uncle Dan life lessons. Anyway,
hard-earned knowledge for your uncles, guys.
Yes, hard learned.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I have been kicked out of many an Applebee's. Anyway, Daksha was pissed to see her. He went off in front of his guests about how ungrateful she was and why can't she be more like her 145 sisters, etc., etc. And she took all that, but when he started in on Shiva, how he was a stupid god and would never amount to anything, and she was like, you just haven't given him a chance. He's a poet.
God, Dad.
And her dad was like, he was fired from his job at Target, for God's sakes. And she was like, he's misunderstood. Anyway, she couldn't take it anymore. She was being torn apart. She had to choose between her family and her husband, and it was all too much for her. So in a last act of crazed young person lashing out, she screamed, I hope I get a decent dad in the next life, and threw herself on the bonfire.
Oh.
Wow.
Killing herself and ruining a perfectly lovely party.
Drama.
Very dramatic, yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, yeah, she was a little extra. Can we just admit this? Unfortunately for Daksha, Shiva had just finished watching The Crow after polishing off a flagon of mulled wine and was in a very dark and violent mood when he heard the news about his wife. So he plucked out 2 locks of his hair and threw them to the ground, and they became Virabhadra and Bhadrakali. Nailed them. Who were some violent motherfuckers and went and killed everybody at the party, including decapitating Daksha.
Oh.
The next day, when the hangover wore off, Shiva felt bad, though, and apparently brought everybody back to life. Things had gotten a little cray, though, and they couldn't find Daksha's head, so Shiva plopped a goat's head on him, and everything was right as rain.
We good, bro?
Yeah. Everything cool?
I like that Hindus look at their gods like Legos.
Yeah.
It's all right. Just put that there. That's fine.
We'll just pop that off and we'll just throw it onto them. Shiva did not, however, bring Sati back to life, so that's weird. The coda to this story is that Shiva started walking the earth, carrying her burned corpse around with him everywhere he went, which was super gross.
All right.
Yeah, awkward.
Just weird. And really just very unhealthy psychologically speaking. So it became apparent that he was just not coming out of his funk at all. So Vishnu, his buddy, decided he was sick of his friend moping around and used his bladed discus to chop Sati's body into pieces. And now there are shrines all over India where those pieces supposedly fell.
Huh.
And that's the story of Sati. Except
he used a discus?
Yeah, he had like this disc with a blade on it.
Like Tron.
Like the Frisbee of Doom.
Or Kroll.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They
very much
didn't
like
make
Kroll.
that up. That shit's been around for forever. So that's the story of Sati, except that she then became Parvati in her next life and married Shiva again, but that's a story for another episode.
Wow.
Well, we all know that couple, right?
Right?
On again, off again, reincarnated,
Dying and becoming somebody else and then going right
carrying
back
her
to
burned
the
corpse
guy.
around.
Fuck.
I think carrying her burned corpse around is the Hindu version of standing outside somebody's window with a boombox over your head.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But that is not the end of this segment. That's the end of that story, but not the end of this segment because there's another Sati. And this isn't a goddess or a person, but a practice.
Oh.
One that went on for literally thousands of years. We have recordings of it going back to the 2nd or 3rd century BCE, but it was probably practiced long before. Sati is the practice of... The practice is the lovely tradition where a widow whose husband has recently died, realizing that she is totally worthless now, throws herself... she decides to follow him into the afterlife and throws herself onto his funeral pyre.
Oh.
So,
Onto his pyre?
Yeah.
Onto his burning pyre?
correct. And kills
God.
herself.
Oh, my God.
Not directly related, really, to the story of Sati the goddess, who wasn't a widow at all.
Right.
But that's what it turned into. So originally it was meant to be this noble and glorious act of voluntary devotion, but they quickly found that most women only volunteer to do it if you force them to. So that's what they did.
Oh, no.
Don't worry, though. The practice was banned by the Mughals. In 1582, Emperor Akbar issued a proclamation that no woman could be forced to die just because her husband had died.
He said, "It's a trap."
That's right. God damn
Go.
you.
Someone got that.
Yeah, no, we all got it. We just didn't want it.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, just to reiterate, the Muslim conqueror of Indian lands was like, you guys, this is barbaric. You're way too misogynist for me.
Wow.
So, that's a thing. But instead of Muslim tolerance spreading to their Hindu neighbors, kind of the opposite seems to have happened. Muslims started getting into Sati as well.
Oh, no.
So, yes, sure, people would shake their heads sadly about it at a party, but when they heard that a woman was going to do it, everybody came out for the event. The practice grew again for a while, but then another Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb, banned it again in 1663, ordering that no officials in any Mughal territory were to allow a woman to burn. So, great.
Hey, progress.
Yeah. And then he died. And I guess they gradually started doing it again, or maybe not gradually, I don't know. When the asshole Europeans started conquering and taking over India, they also banned the practice. The Portuguese banned it in Goa, the Dutch and the French banned it in their little territories. The Danes were a little more chill about women being forced to burn themselves and allowed it in their tiny areas until the 1800s.
Oh, my God.
Then there were the British. They toyed with banning it. Individual important British officers every now and then would stroke their mustaches and disapprovingly say, "Now see here, we oughtn't to do that. It isn't proper."
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 1798 that the first formal British ban took place, and that was only in the city of Calcutta.
Jesus.
More bans followed, often as a result of Christian missionaries spreading word of the disgusting practice. But the bans were only effective when there were people around to enforce them, and the British didn't control all of India anyway for a lot of that time. Anyway, fast forward a little bit to the first and only pan-Indian ban of the practice of sati, which was the Prevention of Sati Act of, checking my notes, carry the two, 1987!
Oh, my God.
Fuck. Wow.
This made it
Fuck.
illegal and punishable by death to force a woman to commit sati. Mind you,
Wow.
there are still reported incidents of sati, so it hasn't gone away entirely. And I get the sense that there's still a little sort of bubbling admiration for a woman willing to do it, but at least it's no longer expected of women, and to force it is considered, bad.
So if you force a woman to burn,
Yeah.
You're put to death, which means your wife is forced to burn.
Right.
And the person who made
just
that
never
happen is put
ends.
to
Just a
death.
long, yeah. You have to keep going until you find a man who doesn't have a wife, and then it stops.
Well, if the How to Heretic stands for anything, folks, I think we can conclusively say it stands for consensual sati, right? You have to establish consent
Yes.
before you force a
exactly.
woman to burn to death because her husband died.
So there you go. It only took thousands of years, but progress.
We kind of got there.
What a fucking weird funeral that must be.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So, all right.
So
well,
there you go.
congratulations, India.
Yeah. Let's all look to India for all of our ideas about how the world should work and what humans should do.
Well, with that,
Let's move it
move
on.
do it.